welcome back to another episode of Buffalo Happy. I'm Mike. What's going on?
And Derek, I drove on a brick road to get here, and it was exciting.
Do you get a lot of people talking about that when they come? They're like, you guys destroyed my tires.
No, but I feel like that sometimes, though, when I have to drive on it. So, yeah. Yep.
It's wild. So we are here at Lockhouse.
Yeah, round 2. So we're excited for this because there's been some elapsed time since we were here last, which was about 2 years.
Yeah.
And we have someone new in the position that we initially interviewed with. So do you want to introduce yourself and present your titles, because you wear like 12 hats now?
I sure do. So I am Rachel Glover. I am technically the Director of Business Development with Lockhouse. However, I do the marketing. I am the brand manager, brand ambassador, tasting manager. I pretty much do everything aside from distill. Brian has that on lock. I don't have time, but everything else, yeah, that's me.
So for those that don't know, literally trying to establish a brand within an industry that may or may not have a lot of other brands in it already.
Yes.
And Lockhouse opened what year?
They were open in 2011. Technically, we were the first distillery in Buffalo since Prohibition. We have moved. We were in the Pierce Arrow building previously. I feel like we're kind of almost outgrowing this space, too, just because we've been rapidly expanding since we've been here. We've already gotten new equipment in the back since I've been here, and it still is like, hey, we need more. So it's like, oof, what do we do now?
Right.
Like, it's a good problem to have, but nonetheless a problem,
Sure.
you know?
So what was the brand like before you came in? Like, what is, I guess, the growth pattern since you got here? Where was it before? Where is it headed?
So when they brought me on, actually, it was mid-pandemic. So I've been here for actually almost 8 months now, which is crazy because I feel like I started yesterday. Like, it doesn't feel like I've been here that long. But, you know, the previous brand manager before me had been doing an amazing job. He really brought the brand where it was. But we focus heavily on gin. Coffee liqueur is kind of like our flagship. We were on the up and up with the coffee, but I decided, you know what, I don't want to be known for what we've been known for. So we make this really cool product called Cinnamon, which I always describe it as Fireball without the aggressive burn. Some people are like, it doesn't taste like that. Really cool product distilled with Vietnamese and Indonesian cinnamon bark. I decided I wanted to make that my personal project because, you know, everyone who doesn't like the coffee liqueur from us? It's phenomenal.
Right.
So we pretty much quadrupled our sales with Cinnamon. Historically speaking, our sales as of last year, this month, were 195 cases this month. As of today, we've sold 102 cases already in a week.
Oh, wow.
Our sales are...
In a week?
In a week, yeah.
Jesus,
so,
it's Tuesday.
Yeah, it's Tuesday, and we're at over 100 cases. So every month we've been pretty much tripling, if not quadrupling, the sales from last year. I can't say from before that because we weren't with the same distributor, so I can't see what we were doing. But we're just on the up and up, and it feels really good to be a part of that and knowing, like, hey, I'm building this, we're growing it, we're evolving the brand.
So why did you want to ride the Cinnamon train? Is that something that you just really enjoy drinking, or what's the significance of that?
Honestly, when they told me about it, I hated it, and I was like, so we're not doing this. It sounds dumb. It was too gimmicky for me. Like,
sure.
Cinnamon, okay. But it was because, you know what, like, I've never seen it done before. It has been done. Well, somebody has one. Actually, in Niagara Falls, there's a distillery. I don't know the name of it, but they call it, like, Inferno something. But I haven't seen it before. I mean, like, our coffee liqueur is phenomenal, like I said, but you have Grind, you have Mr. Black. Like, you have different products that are very similar. You know, the Cinnamon, one, it is fun to say, like, I'll say it. And two, like, it's so gimmicky that it works. I wanted to see something different for us. I don't want to just be like, oh, Lockhouse is known for their coffee.
Sure.
All right, so now we have another product that people are like, oh my gosh, the Cinnamon with cider. And we have Mayer Brothers, so why not kind of combine the two? So I've made that, like, my mission is, like, I want to push the Cinnamon. Obviously, coffee sells itself. Our vodka is great, but vodka's vodka.
Right.
Gin's awesome, but Cinnamon, like, come on. Doesn't get better than that.
Well, because you guys also pride yourselves on barrel-aged gin here, right? Like, your gin is different in that aspect.
So we actually have the longest barrel-aged gin in the U.S. at this point, 4 years, 42 days.
Wow.
Virgin oak barrel, so it's not a previously used bourbon barrel. A lot of people think that, super common misconception. I compare ours anytime I go into an account. I look at different, Black Button has one. I think it's St. Lawrence Spirits has one. Maybe it's not them. It could be. I know that Southern Tier has one. Ours is the darkest I've seen. It's cool though. It's got like lavender hints to it. It kind of goes through like the tasting notes of bourbon, then like to gin, then to lavender. It's like this whole experience. It's our most awarded spirit. I love it. I would like to do some different things with it that hopefully we do. But it's really cool. It's different. But to me, even that, I don't want to say it's run of the mill because it's not,
right.
But you've seen it. People have seen that before. It's nothing out of the ordinary, but that is our most awarded spirit that we have.
It's what got you guys on the map in the first place. From the initial push of realistically 2011 to 2016, 2017, it was that product, because everybody was here during the revitalization of the Cobblestone District. Because for some reason, Helium Comedy Club really started picking up by bringing in premier comedians. The Sabres were at that time fun to go to games to and watch. Rip. And then it's a perfect location because of everything that is happening in the city.
100%.
But now that you have the other products that are branching out, what is the idea and scope moving forward with this location? Because you guys had like koala bears before, kangaroos. Like it was insanity, and everyone's like, "This is really cool." The cocktails here it's awesome. The bar here is really different. So, what are your thoughts on that moving forward?
So we do plan to reopen. I know that everyone's been asking. It's like the hot topic. When are you guys opening back up? We do have plans to open up this spring. I know that spring is in like a week, supposedly.
Right.
But we want to reopen. We are still going to be a part of Cobblestone Live, which is what the Kangaroos came from. So we're doing that this summer as well. But we do want to be more of a cocktail bar. Obviously, that's my vision for it. Honestly, like I've been going back and forth with the owner. I want to do like some Miami Vice vibes in here. I know it's probably not going to be a thing, but in my head, we're doing Miami Vice. But we want to be more cocktail driven. Previously, this was a huge party bar, like it was. There's a lot of really cool parties. I want to do more event driven versus like, hey, we're going to have like a rager in here and get wild. I would like to see a little bit more like speakeasy vibes. Like Hartman's has a down pat with their speakeasy. It's phenomenal. I don't want to be that, but I want to be like, hey, we're very cocktail driven, but we're not only our products. As you can see on our wall, like we carry a bunch of different products. We like supporting other local distilleries. So, being able to team up potentially with, say, do a Hartman's take overnight, have them in there, have Black Button come in here, have St. Lawrence Spirits. Like I see doing stuff like that and, bringing in different demographic of people than we have previously.
Sure. So what was your position prior to joining Lockhouse? What got you in the industry?
So that's a
loaded question.
That's a fully loaded question.
Love it.
So I started bartending back in my early 20s. I worked at Sub-Zero, for those of us that are old enough to remember that nice little place on Chippewa Underground. And I started working as a brand ambassador, promotional model for Deep Betty and Jack Daniels. Now, we were with Empire, so there was a position called ADS. It was basically a sales position that only did on-premise bars. They would do the events, everything like that. And I saw that position. I'm like, that's really cool. This guy get paid to like hang out in a bar. Yeah, this is cool. I want to do that. So continued to do that. One day I saw Black Button was hiring for an on-premise territory manager, and I'm like, I want to do that. I didn't think I'd get it because I had no experience aside from really being a promotional model, doing events at bars, restaurants, things like that, liquor stores. Well, I got the position, and I'm like, what do I do?
Did you want to work for a local distillery? Is that kind of what drove that whole, there's an opening here, I want to come local and do that?
It wasn't necessarily a local thing. It
sure.
was more of like a, hey, this is my opportunity to squeeze in. Do I take it or do I kind of, sit stagnant? So I, took it, leaped, got the position. It was phenomenal. They were a great start. They're a great distillery. Their bourbon cream is still one of my favorite things. I was at one of my restaurants one night, lucky day, as I usually do, and I was sitting at the bar, and this nice gentleman was sitting next to me, and I was just talking to the bartender, and he was like, oh, like, are you meeting somebody? And I'm like, no, like, I'm here, this is one of my accounts. He's like, what do you mean an account? And I'm like, well, I'm a territory manager for a distillery. This is my account. I provide them with stuff. I'm like, where are you from? He's like, Jersey. I'm like, let me buy you a good old Buffalo cocktail with my product. And I'm explaining it to him, and he's like, you know what? I I want to hire you. I'm like, I don't know what kind of girl you think I am. But
Yeah, that can mean a couple different
no,
things.
thank you. And he's like, no, I actually manage Devil's River Whiskey out of San Antonio. And I'm like, holy cow. Like, all right, cool. So I got, poached. I started with them. I loved it. I was the territory sales manager for the whole state. I traveled around the country, did a lot of events. New York City Whiskey Fest, which was the coolest thing I've ever been to in my life. COVID took that away from me.
Right.
Unfortunately, they had to pretty much furlough all of us. I took a position with my old office. I saw that Iron Smoke Distilling out of Rochester was hiring. And I applied, heard nothing. I was like, all right. So I'm embarrassing. I found the owner on LinkedIn and I messaged him. I was like, hey, I applied for your position. I would love to work for you.
Oh, that's cool.
I was like, you know what? If you want something, you have to go and get it. You can't just sit there and be like, oh, I guess they don't want me. I was like, you know what? No. I want this position. I want to be back in the industry. So I messaged him, and the next day I got a call. Hey, we'd love to interview you. Interviewed. They gave me the job on the spot. We kind of negotiated. I was brought on as the upstate New York brand manager, which was a lot of fun. But, I didn't want to be a sales rep anymore, and that was kind of like a lingering thing in my head. Like, I want more out of this. So one day, I got a good old message like, hey, you looking for a career change? And it was Lockhouse. And I'm like, you know what? I'm always open for a conversation. So I met with them. They were hiring for a director of business or a sales rep. And I'm like, well, that sales rep, we can just push that over there. So I ended up taking the position with them, and I've been here for 8 months. But it's been like quite a roller coaster of like, ups and downs. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to ever get back into this industry? Because, everything changed so much. But I'm like, this is where I want to be. So, yeah.
That's really cool.
So, with your new role and having conversations with ownership about the vibe moving forward,
Yeah.
it would be fascinating to have an open face cocktail bar
Yeah.
in this specific section of the city because
I
it
agree.
doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. And actually, I don't know if you guys heard, Marcella's, that building, they're opening literally right over there. So
They're moving, right?
they're moving the whole. I'm not sure why. I'm super excited about it because I'm like, you know what? You're bringing stuff into this area that we don't have.
Right.
I mean, we're a destination bar. You're either starting your night here or you're ending your night here. I mean, you're going to pop in here and there, but it's not, oh, let's go to Lockhouse after we bought an Allen. You're not going to do that. So I really do. I want to make this like an open facing, like a cocktail bar, like elevated cocktails, like light fare. I don't want it to be like full meals or anything. Like, it's unnecessary, but it'd be really cool to have in this area.
How do you start something like that?
I don't know.
You just do it.
You just kind of feel like you come out of the gate swinging with that one. And
Sure.
it's like we've been closed for so long that really I feel like the sky's kind of the limit with us. Like, we could come out with anything, and people have been so gung-ho on like, when are you opening? I think there'd be full support behind it. So we've been going back and forth with what we want to do, but we do, hopefully within the next few months, get like a full game plan together, move everything forward with it.
I feel like you're in such an interesting position, though, because of your extremely wide range of gins that you have. Like, you can open up a cocktail bar that has such a unique twist on traditional cocktails because of the flavors in your gin.
Right.
Like, I don't think people understand. If you haven't tried Lockhouse's gin, it's one of the most unique gins you will try. Like, the flavors in there are so pronounced and different from your typical, this tastes a little bit like juniper. It's like, no, like, come here and try it out because there's so much more floral depthness to your gin that it adds such a different complexity to a cocktail.
And like, we're a New York style gin, so we're not an English gin, we're not a London dry. We use at least 10 different botanicals in it, so it's not going to be that super, as people say, pine cone heavy. We use cinnamon in it, we use orange peel, we use angelica root, we use marshmallow root. Like, we use a lot of different things in it. Then for our Sakura cherry blossom gin, same thing. We use hibiscus, rose petals, coconut flakes, cherry blossoms, cinnamon, Vietnamese and Indonesian cinnamon bark. Like, we do so many different things, and the barrel gin is obviously the same base as the New York style, but we put lavender in it. So every single gin is completely different. It's not like they're the same base and you're just kind of throwing some cherry blossoms into it or some cinnamon sticks in it. Like, they're completely different. So it's not like anything you've ever tried before.
Plus your bitters,
Yes.
which we need to touch on, specifically if that's the direction that is trying to be attained, because that opens up
Right.
a whole different menu.
I know. And like we do like our Bisco bitter is really cool. You can make really cool cocktails with it, Negronis. A lot of my on-premise like bars use that in a cocktail. Like Winfield Pub has been buying cases of it, and they just go through it. Cure in Rochester buys cases of it. It's such a unique product. Same with our Amaro. I like to preface that one as like an Amaro with training wheels because it's a little bit sweeter. So if you're trying to ease into those, a lot of people, I mean, they're on the up and up too, which is crazy to me. Like all the cocktails and spirits that people are gravitating towards are things that I liked when I was like 21, 22. Like espresso martinis right now, like what is happening in life? Every single bar is like an espresso martini. I'm like, it's great for me, but I'm like, listen, I used to go to Bar Louie, $5 happy hour.
Hell yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
that's what I'm
Sliders.
saying,
Yeah.
right?
Burger night on
Those are the
Tuesdays.
best.
Yes,
Dollar
and
burger night.
That's what I'm saying. And yeah, and I miss Bar Louie, R.I.P.
I know.
R.I.P. to that.
Oh, but yeah, we have such elevated spirits. I mean, even the coffee, it's distilled with 19 pounds of espresso from Public Espresso. A lot of people don't know it's actually caffeinated. For every ounce, there's the equivalent of a 10-ounce cup of coffee, caffeine-wise.
For every ounce?
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's that I can't do it. I'll literally shake out of the bar.
Yeah, like it's a lot. Like a few of my accounts use that as a house shot. So if you're there at 2 a.m., you're not going to bed. It's a really cool spirit though. So a lot of the spirits just use a flavoring. We actually use espresso. We let it macerate for 3 weeks in the tank, get that full flavor out of it. So again, it's not like we're using any artificial flavors, sweeteners, nothing like that. It's all true to taste. Like what you see is what you get with us.
Who's doing the distilling here?
Brian's been here since pretty much day one. I love him. He is a trip, but he's here. We have a distilling assistant, Michael. He's great too. But Brian's here pretty much by himself, just cranking things out Monday through Friday, sometimes weekends. But right now, since we've honestly been like pretty much doubling production, I feel bad. He works nonstop.
Right.
Like it's a lot. So we're, in the talks of, we have a lot going on here, but I'm like, we're going to need a second distiller soon. Because you can't put all that on one person and expect them to be able to carry that workload, especially we're with 3 different distributors too. So we're not even just with like Empire and different states, we have different distributors. This month they all put in POs for orders and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna need more stuff made. Cool.
And you guys aren't even open. I bet
No.
even when you're open, this bar is
It's
selling.
That's the thing is once we reopen, I'm like, so how are we going to keep up with all the production and stuff? Because honestly, a lot of people come in here. If you're going to the Sabres game, a lot of, Canadians come in here. They want to try it. And also, like, one of my biggest things is I want to be able to push bottles, have the bartenders push bottles out the bar. Like, hey, you loved this cocktail. You can take it home with you. So it's like, all right, now when we open that, we have to think about, we're going to probably even double production at that point because we're never slow here when we're open.
Sure.
So...
Which your distributors, does that take into account the liquor stores? It does, right?
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's both on and off premise. So liquor stores, bars, and restaurants. Event venues as well. We do, try to get into those. Hopefully we get more of them this year, but that's everything.
It's fascinating where I go into, because I have family outside of Buffalo, and I'll go into a liquor store. Before arrival, I have to have a bottle of something because,
You just do.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I'm just like, well, Lockhouse is out here too. Lockhouse is out here too. I'm like, this is crazy.
We're getting, I was just in D.C. About 3 weeks ago, and we've been in that market. Corey had been out there doing a lot of work in the market. Me going back out, it's crazy when you walk into a bar and they're like, oh, you're our house gin. And I'm like, wow,
That's
really?
cool.
That's so cool. Like, I'm looking and I'm like, that's the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's like such a pride thing for me being like, this is DC. Like, this is a huge city. You're walking in, you're seeing it on shelves, and it's not like it's just local. We're in New York City right now. We've actually been taking off. I'll be in New York City in 2 weeks doing a trade show with our distributor there. But even there, like, we just had to switch our bottles with the glass shortage to... We had the little tiny coffee bottles, the little square guys. Now they're in the taller round bottles like the rest of them. Bartenders love it because they fit in a well. And again, with the espresso martini craze, it's been really easy to push that. So,
Can you touch on the glass bottle shortage? Because if it's not that, it's corks. And then if it's not corks,
the
and
labels.
it's not glass. Yeah, so which we know about that. So anyways,
I was gonna
we'll
say,
just
you
glide
guys-
right past that.
Yeah.
you guys probably got into that while you were
Sure
doing
did.
your stuff.
Yeah, that's super fun. So why? Like, where did that come from?
gosh.
What about glass? That makes
So-
no sense.
I was in the same boat as you, and I was really like how is there a glass shortage? It's made out of sand. It is. So, like, all right,
fair.
Anakin Skywalker, I know you hate sands, but, like, come on, buddy. So, with the glass shortage, a lot of the glass distributors during COVID actually shut down and started making medical devices because they were pretty much had the same equipment to do medical devices as they did glass. They stopped making glass. They fixated on that, which I'm sure you guys may know this or may not, because I know you guys started your own barrel picks, which is awesome.
Thank you.
You know, you see these bottles, and certain companies make certain bottles. Like we use the Gemini bottles. That's a specific type. The square ones, we couldn't find them. A few weeks after that, the corks that we use in the bottles, they're like, we're not making those. That I don't have an answer for. In a lot of places, even Buffalo Trace had to go to synthetic corks. They're not even making corks anymore, which, again, I don't get that part of it. But the glass was basically due to a lot of distributors that were making glass decided to go into medical devices, which were more profitable at this point in time, as well as there was a higher need for it. So I think it was Jack Daniels. They actually quit production for 3 months. Not that it affected them at all, because it's Jack Daniels.
Sure.
But they had to go into plastic bottles. And I'm like, oh boy, okay. So we tried to find our bottles. We had different alternatives. None of them worked. Like they were square, but they were tall. They looked wonky. So we're like, all right, we're just gonna redo the label for the Amaro and the coffee. And then it was like, oh, what if we can get them back? Do we play switching back and forth? Do we just stick to it? So we're like, you know what? We're just gonna across the board have the same bottles now. It's kind of frustrating because like everybody knows the coffee is like the little square bottle, and now they're like, but it's kind of cool. The new label's like a rose gold. It's really pretty, but it's just crazy to me what happened as an outcome of like all of this nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm like, where are my bottles? And like that was literally a month into me starting here. So they're like, hey, there's a glass shortage, and I'm like,
Yeah,
so
welcome.
Like, okay, and cool, love that for everybody else. And they're like, well, it's your problem now, and I'm like, cool. So Brian actually took time out of his life to source all these bottles. We had so many samples sent, and we're just finally like, you know what? We're not going to find it. So wait till you guys start your own brand, because you will, like all the other ones, and you can deal with this then.
Yeah, not looking forward to that. But your bottles are so unique. So I guess that has to be the challenging part, is that you could have probably gotten, like you said, something basic.
Yep.
And you're like, that doesn't fit our brand.
It wasn't Lockhouse, and I didn't want to like force something and be
Right.
like, oh, well, this is what we're doing for now. And then it's like, are my stores going to get mad that I keep switching the bottle? And we're like, oh, just kidding, we're going to this. Oh, we're going to go back to this. Now we have to go back to this. So we just made the executive choice. We're going to put them all in the same bottle. We had talked before I came on, this was a thing that we were going to switch all the bottles. I don't want to. I like how they look now. I think they're really nice. But, and especially with the shortage, I'm like, let's not play with fire.
Well,
Let's not do that.
Being in the industry, you and I have noticed that there's so many different ways 750 milliliters can be shaped into a bottle.
yeah.
It's disgusting how
So,
this is
yes.
not the same at all to what we reviewed last week.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
it's crazy because people, when I do tastings at stores now, I have, like, a lot of my stores do still have the little square guys. So I'll be sampling out of the taller one, and they're like, why do you have more liquor than this bottle? And I'm like, it's not. And they're like, it is. And I'm like, how much time do you have? I could literally dump both of these out. It's the same amount of liquor in both of them, but the different shapes just like make it look like there's so much more in it. Like, look at a bottle of Old Granddad. It's like there's
Right.
there's not that much in there, but there is. You look at some of these bottles and you're like, they're such weird shapes. Like,
It's wild.
And I think Old Granddad, they've been out of stock a lot. So I'm like, are they having glass issues? Because come on.
Now, has the glass shortage affected just 750 milliliters, or has it also affected the 1.75s?
So we don't have 1.75, so I'm not sure. I would assume so.
Yeah.
Because depending on the shape of the bottle, because if you specifically commissioned, like, hey, we want this shape of bottle, and like you can pick a lot of these out. If they're not making it, I would assume you'd have to go to like something different, which is why I'm kind of happy that we only have the 750s, because I'm like, I can't imagine the distilleries that have the 375s, 750s, 1.5 liter. Like, I don't want to deal with any of that.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, could you imagine a giant gentleman jack in plastic?
That's what I mean. Like,
That'd be so strange.
Well, it has to
Like-
deteriorate the plastic too. It's at some point, like, it doesn't
It
have the
has
same
to.
life cycle as a glass bottle.
no.
It can't.
And I feel like it would ultimately alter like the taste of it.
Sure.
You know, if It's in the sun. It's in the cold. Like,
It's
plastic.
It's probably got its own label where it's like, please drink 3 months quicker.
Yeah.
Please don't let this sit on the shelf. You might get sick, and we're not liable for that.
So one thing that's interesting about this place here is I feel like a lot of local distilleries do not have a lot of outside products on their shelf.
Right.
So
Yeah.
what's the benefit of that?
Okay, so say you go to Hartman's and you want a bourbon. I mean, you can go in their barrel room. Can't say that. You want a different bourbon.
Right.
So never mind. Say you're going to Black Button and you want a bourbon, but you want something a little bit spicier. You don't want a rye, but you don't want a super high corn mash bill that's super sweet, but you want to get an old fashioned. So you have to deal with the cards you're dealt at that point. You can't get what you want to. I know when I go to bars, like sometimes, like especially with gins, I am a gin drinker, despite, like I work for a gin distillery. I don't like super piney gins. I like Hendrick's. Hendrick's has always been a good one for me. I like something like that. Now, Black Button, just we're using them as an instance, they have a citrus forward gin. What if you don't like that? So I want a French 75. I don't want the super citric.
Right.
So it makes sense because a lot of the times, even with like breweries, you go in there and sometimes they only have beer. Say me and my best friend go out and she hates beer. Now she has options. Say I bring somebody here and they don't like bourbon, they like ryes. We don't make a rye. I mean, we don't make a bourbon either, but all right, so they came in here, they want an old fashioned. We could do it with like the barrel gin, but I mean, it's going to be gin at the end of the
Right.
day. So we want to cater to everybody. We don't make a rum. We have rum in here, tequila, things like that. And like a distillery like a New York State, they're not going to have obviously tequila because they can't
Sure.
make tequila. So I just think it caters more to everybody. And like we didn't want this just to be like an exclusive, like this is only Lockhouse. We wanted it to be all inclusive. Anybody can come here, they can get what they want to. Hey, you want something, request it, we'll bring it in. I mean, we even have like chartreuse and a lot of, we have Fernet in here. You want something different, you want a shot of something, we can do that too. And I know a lot of distilleries are like not super into doing shots.
Yeah.
We're into doing shots.
Do you do local beers here?
We do.
Okay.
So when we have the taps open, I know I haven't been here while working here while it's open, but I know I've been here in the past. We try to keep all the taps local. We do have obviously like Jenny and stuff down there. We have Bud Light, Blue Light, everything like that. But taps, we're trying to keep it local. And we try to, kind of support the breweries that support us. So 42 North is a huge supporter of us. Hamburg Brewing does, Resurgence. So, we try and keep those on tap.
Sure.
I think it's smart too, though, because again, you're playing to location. So you're having the walk-in traffic, and a lot of people are going to have very loud opinions because they're not necessarily from Buffalo, specifically because the arena's right there. So you're having fans from across the country probably coming here to watch a victory for their own team.
Yep.
Come in for a drink, and that's the conversation you're having, and it makes sense. I mean, why would you eliminate potentially 40% of your walk-in business because somebody doesn't want that,
Or
whatever
they
that
want-
is?
Yeah, they want a bourbon, and we're like, sorry, we don't do it. And now they're like, okay, well, we're going to walk over to Ballyhoo then because, they have one.
Yeah.
So you're deterring people. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with the business model of only having your own products. Like, I do get that too. But a lot of our walk-in, they're not, not saying Lockhouse isn't great, but they're not walking in here because they're like, oh my God, I heard about Lockhouse. I want to go see it. They're like, hey, we're at a Sabres game and we're just or we're at Helium Comedy Club. We saw a show. It's over. We're going to go walk to a bar. It's, we're not Hartman's. We're not a bourbon distillery that people are specifically coming because they're bourbon drinkers. People are coming in here because there's foot traffic. They were at a Sabres game. They, we're at Riverworks and are looking for something to do. So we didn't want to deter anybody.
Yeah. So you said that you're a gin drinker. Is gin your favorite, or are you a bourbon whiskey person? How would you rank them?
Bourbon, then gin.
Yeah.
So I did start with gin. I actually hated bourbon for a minute till I started with Black Button, actually. And Alex, my counterpart at the time, was like, well, kiddo, you work for a bourbon distillery.
Right.
And I'm like, cool, we sell gin. He's like, correct. But we're primarily bourbon. You have to drink bourbon. And I was like, oof, I don't know about that. I'm like, I've tried Jim Beam. I'm set. And he's like, no. So he's like, we're at Oak Save. And he's like, I'm going to order you an ounce of a bourbon I like. And I'm like, dang, all right. So he got me Woodford Double Oaked. He was like, just sip it. And I'm like, he's like, sip it and really let it sit on your tongue. And I'm like, okay. He's like, what do you taste? We're going through tasting notes. He's like, do you get like that char? You got some
Flame.
Yeah,
Flame ethanol. Pain.
Pain.
I get sadness and remorse. So, after that I was like, wow, this is kind of cool. And I don't know the other pour he got. I just remember mine, but he's like, try this now. And I'm like, wow, these are different. So that kind of started me into like, wow, I like bourbon. So now I'm like, cool, bourbon is like up here and gin's a little bit down.
Did you ever have that realization with gin? So like when you got into bourbon, you had somebody walking you through
Yeah.
the differences with bourbon. Did you ever have that with gin, or you
No.
just liked it because it tasted good at the time?
I just liked it
Okay.
because, when I was bartending when I was younger, vodka sodas, gin and tonics, Jack and Cokes, like, yeah, when I bartended, there was not really a cocktail scene. I was on Chippewa, so it was very like, you're going to do a cherry bomb. And I'm like, cool. I love this. I love Vegas
Sounds like a
bombs.
terrible time.
Yeah, it wasn't the best time ever. But it was very basic cocktails. So I was just trying everything. And I'm like, oh, I kind of like gin. But I never really had someone be like, okay, like try this one, try this one, try this one. Because they're all so different. Like people don't realize that. I'm like, most people are like, oh, I had a bad time on gin. So I call those gincidents. I'm like, so you had a gincident with your gin. I'm like, but try this. Like, you're going to get, subtle hints of orange. You're going to get some cinnamon. You're going to get a little bit of sweetness on there. And, like, people are like, yeah, you know what, you're right. But gins are the same way. And I kind of like gins because they're almost, they're not similar to bourbons, but the way that you can distill the botanicals in, it's kind of like the mash bill of a bourbon.
Right.
Depending on what you're putting in it, it's going to completely change the flavor profile. And when people are like, I hate gin, it all tastes the same, it does not. Also, depending on how you're drinking it, like I tell people with Lockhouse gin, muddle a cucumber in it. Instead of doing that acidity from the lime, the cucumber is going to bring out those botanicals. The lime's going to mask the botanicals, and you're not going to taste all the tasting notes on it. You're just going to get like, all right, so I get some junipers and that piney, little bit of sweetness, but with that cucumber, it plays well into the botanicals. And our gin does play well with others. You can do different cocktails with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So you were at that bar, you tried the two different bourbons, and you're like,
Yep.
I am intrigued that these taste differently. Is that what started your whole bourbon journey?
Yeah, honestly. And then Alex would take me to, again, this was pre-COVID, back when Premier used to do, I'm not sure if you guys have been there, they have like this little back room, the one on Transit, and they used to do tasting classes. So Kimber from Maker's Mark was their ambassador. She did this whole thing with all their different bourbons and like the staves. And Alex took me to one of the classes, and I was like, this is so cool. So then when Devil's River picked me up, one of my first events was Whiskey Fest in New York City. So of course it was me, my boss Steven, and then our other counterpart. So obviously we all took turns walking around, and I'm like, this is before like the bourbon craze was like a thing. So like, it was busy, but it wasn't like how Whiskey Riot is here. It was more like enthusiasts. So like they had all the pappies there, and I got to go in. There was no line. You got to try them, the Blantons. You got to go into Maker's Mark, made like this makeshift rick house with like all their different whiskeys, their bourbons, everything. So I was like, this is really cool, and every single one tasted so different. So that, like after Whiskey Fest, I was like hooked on it. I'm like, this is the coolest thing ever. Like they're all so different, and everybody in the industry was just so welcoming that I was like, I really like this. Like it's a little bit different now, I would say.
Sure.
After the craze, so
It is interesting how it hit the city differently because it went from craft beer to then distilleries,
Yep.
and then now everyone's starting to learn more about it. But it's the nation's spirit. So
It
if
is.
there's one thing to be proud of, why not? And
have
at
a
this
bourbon?
in this day and age, we need more things that unite us. So
right.
why not get drunk over it
Exactly. Get drunk with some unity of things we like.
responsibly, of course?
Yeah, I guess so.
So now you have an Instagram page that reviews whiskey.
So I do.
What is your favorite whiskey that you've tried? Do you have one that stands out as like, this is my favorite?
Oh yeah.
Everyone makes fun of me. So I do an Ask Me Anything Monday, every Monday. And the first one I did, I got over like 500 responses. And I'm like, holy cow, like this sucks. I have to respond to these. But everyone's like, what's your favorite bourbon? What's your favorite bourbon? I'm like, I love Eagle Rare. Like one night I did a podcast with Bourbon with Friends, and I drank a half a bottle.
Wow.
Oh yeah, that was, and That was a real bad night. Like I opened an Old Fitz and an Elmer Tea Lee, and I mixed them together. Oh yeah, one of those nights. Like
Yikes.
it was not good. But it's just like it's smooth, it's sweet. Like there's no burn to it. That's like what I gravitate towards. Another thing is Blanton's little Pony Boy bourbon. It's so cliche and niche. Everyone's like, oh, you got any Blantons in the back? But I'm like, it's a good bourbon. You can't really go. It's sweet. Mm-hmm. It's sweeter. There's no bite to it. But if I had to pick, honestly, Eagle Rare is like my go-to. I got yelled at because I make too many cocktails with it. But I'm like, I like what I like.
Yeah.
You know?
Who cares what it is? If it makes a good cocktail, whatever.
Right.
We were joking because we reviewed Pappy on our show, and the owner's grandson was like, I want Pappy old fashioned. And the guy at the bar, right? You were telling me the story where the dude at the bartender's like, we won't do that. And he's like, literally.
It was I don't believe it was an old fashioned. It was the cocktail that the grandfather actually had his whiskey with every time.
Yes.
And his grandson ordered it, and the bartender like refused him to do it. And he's like, I'm not making a cocktail with this whiskey. And he goes, do it. So he did, and then he's like, okay, well, it's X amount. And then he gave him his card, and then the bartender looked at his card for checkout and then saw the name on the card.
Van Winkle.
And it was a Van Winkle. And then he just looked at him and he's like, that's how my grandfather drank the whiskey. And I'm just keeping it going. And the bartender was just like, zzz.
Yep, and I feel like that's honestly a lot of it too. Is you like what you like, and I mean I've done podcasts and like lives where I've done blind tastings. One, they sent me 3 different bottles. They were all marked with a number. Didn't tell me what they were. One ended up being an Old Bardstown Bottled and Bond. One was Johnny Drum, and one was Pappy 15. I picked the Old Bardstown Bottled and Bond over all of them, over the Pappy 15. It kind of goes like one of my biggest things is we taste with our eyes. We see these highly allocated bottles. We see these expensive bottles. We want to love them. They're okay, but are they worth the money that people are paying for secondary
Not at
pricing?
all.
No.
That's what we
Not
talked
at all.
when we reviewed Pappy. We're just like, okay, this essentially will sell for $1,200 in a store.
100%.
And we're like, okay, so we try it, and the first thing we said was, it smells and it tastes like Weller.
Yeah.
And
Because it is.
however,
Yep.
if you're collecting, you have to have it.
It's a
And
part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's something to have, and that's what pulls you in. That's what brings you in, and that's what's so fun about the industry is there's, like, I just picked up a bottle of Prohibition style Old Forester because it's like you have to. That's just something you have to have.
it.
You have to have that on the shelf, and same with Double Oaked. To your point, we just reviewed it again. And I was like, it's just something that you should have. Same with Buffalo Trace because it fits so many people's tasting profiles. Even if they're new or experienced, it's just good to have in your collection so that you can be a better host.
Right. And it's good to do, honestly. Like, I like doing blind tastings with things because, like, honestly, my boyfriend, I was very like, I like Weller Special Reserve. I don't like anything else. So
That's what he
he's like-
said?
No, he was making fun of me. Apparently, that's how I talk. I guess I talk like that. I like Weller. So that's me. That's Rachel.
That's
in
Rachel.
Pat's eyes, that's how I talk. I'm like, I like Weller. And I do like Weller. But he's like, all right, Miss Weller. Like, so he poured me 3 pours. He's like, all right, let's do this. And I'm like, okay. So we're trying them. He's like, which one do you like? I'm like, I like this one the best. And he's like, it's Wild Turkey 101. And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna sit
Got
down
him.
now.
You're like, damn it.
But I mean, like, me and my brother-in-law do that a lot too. Like, the last time New Year's Eve, we did like a blind tasting. He poured 4, and I could pick every single one out. He's like, that is really impressive that you literally can pick out like profiles and like, you know, different tastes. I'm like, Blanton's obviously. I'm like, I know which one this one is. But we did like a 4 Roses small batch, 1910 Old Forester, and I want to say it was like the Weller, the pot still, or the Willet pot still, and I was like, oof. It's a hot one. Yeah. But it's like, I love doing blind tastings with people, especially when everyone's like, it all tastes the same. I'm like, it does not taste the same. It's different.
Yeah, that's somebody that just doesn't understand the complexities within whiskey. Is there something that you won't touch? Like, I know that you're not really a Scotch person, right?
No.
But is
Gosh, no. Oh, no. I feel bad, too. One of my accounts the other day, I was in Rochester, and they were actually doing an Old Forester barrel pick, and I got to try all the single barrels.
Nice.
That's really cool.
I felt so cool. I'm like, oh, my God. He's like, do you want to try it? I'm like, yeah. Yeah, I would love that. So he let me try them, and then he's like, "Oh, we're doing a Scotch too," and I'm like, "So I gotta go now." It's cool.
I don't know if you saw. I got an email. So
My mom's actually calling me. I have to leave. Honestly, I don't like tequila. I will shoot tequila. One of my best friends, every time we go out, like, I'll turn around and there's a shot, and I'm like, let me guess, tequila? Is that tequila? And she's like, yes, tequila. And I'm like, cool. There's nothing I won't, like, touch, though.
Yeah.
Scotch is never going to be something that I buy.
What was your first Scotch that you tried? Was it something really peaty and that turned you off? I'm always fascinated because Scotch to me is like the bourbon, where you have to have the right one to kind of appreciate it.
I think it was Balvenie.
Okay. Oh, really?
I think so. When I worked for, what was it? William Grant, I did a few events with them. I did Whiskey Riot with them a few years back. And he had Balvenie, he had Tully, obviously, he had Hudson, and I tried the Balvenie, and I was just like,
oh, really?
This isn't it for me. But this was a few years ago, and again, like, I'm one of those people that I'm like, I don't like this, I'm not doing it. I'm not eating this, I'm not drinking this. So I do want to revisit, and also I've had a lot of people give me suggestions as to, like, hey, you should try this, because it's not as smoky, it's not as peaty, it's not as earthy. And I'm like, all right. So I do have, like, a little note thing that I try to keep up with, but I'm always like, I'm open to suggestions, especially when I go out somewhere and I'm like, hey, can I just try, like, a little bit of that? But
we'll bring some next round.
I know, I'm like, oh, next one, and I'll be like, this is so good.
Yeah, wow. Really. I'll throw up after.
I know. We should probably keep all the equipment in the car and just hang out and drink.
Seriously.
And then we can just go off the rails.
Man, we do have
to try that.
Okay.
So yeah,
should we grab some glasses?
Yeah. So let's talk about that and kind of set up what is happening. So you started an Instagram page for your whiskey, kind of just to bring awareness to whiskey culture, specifically with, like, removing the stigma with female drinkers, right?
Yeah, and, like, honestly, I can say, being a female in this industry, a lot of people think, like, oh, it makes it so much easier for you. And I'm like, let me tell you something. Being a female in the distilled spirits industry is not easy. There's maybe, I would say, a handful of female reps in the Buffalo market. I've tried to get to know a lot of them. I know September used to be the rep for St. Lawrence. She is an angel. I love her.
Used to be? She's gone?
So she's not gone. She's with Try It Now. So she left. She has a better position.
Loved her. She was nice.
She's so nice. Yeah. I love her. So, like,
she was super cool.
She is an angel. Like, I love her, and she's the nicest human ever. And I see her all the time because her accounts are still my accounts.
Nice.
But I mean, like, there's some Empire reps and some Southern reps, and I mean, I think the 1911 rep's a female. Same with 9-Pin. But being a female, you go into an account and either people are like, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about, or just leave. Like, it's the boys club. And I get dismissed a lot with that. Like, it's the boys club.
It's like that in construction, too.
I can imagine. Like, actually, this girl that I met at one of my accounts works for Granger. She's like, I wear a pink hard hat. And I'm like, I love that, because honestly, I used to work for Admar way back in the day. Funny thing, nobody took me seriously. They were kind of like, this girl that they have answering the phones. And I'm like, I probably know more about equipment parts than you do, but okay, go on.
Sure.
So that's like me now when I get challenged. Like, I did an event recently with Nickel City Cigar, and there was an event posted in a group in Buffalo, and I got all this backlash being like, you're an influencer. You take pictures with bottles. And I'm like, oh my gosh, here we go. And I'm like, if you knew my background, like, I pride myself on the fact that, like, one, I listen to podcasts daily when I drive around for work. Granted, I don't work in the bourbon industry, but I like keeping up to date with it. Like, I feel like there's not as much going on in the gin industry.
Sure.
So I keep up with it. Two, like, I follow different distilleries. I'm friends with, different distillers. I like to keep myself educated. And three, like, I'm not know-it-all of the industry. I like to try things. I know what I like. My other issue is everybody has a different palate. What I taste, what you guys taste is going to be completely different. You can definitely put tasting notes in people's heads.
Oh, for sure.
100%. And I do that with my gin all the time. I'm like, oh, did you get this on it? Do you get this on it? When I do the cinnamon cider, I'm like, oh, it tastes like an apple crumble, right? Yeah. I'm like, put that in a crock pot. You got yourself an apple crisp.
I think that's actually an interesting point. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
no, that's fine.
the whole putting tasting notes in people's heads, something that when you start tasting so many different whiskeys, you develop the ability to not necessarily like taste different things, but then to correlate what you're tasting to words.
Yes.
So the whole thing like, I'm getting kind of like a sweeter fruit, maybe something like that. And then someone says apple cobbler.
And you're like, yes,
damn right. Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
And that's like one of my favorite things is like, I love trying things with people and being like my boyfriend and I tried this German whiskey last night. And I was like, I get like this like dusty, not old tasting, but like literally dusty, ground, almost like a yeasty, malty, and I'm like, it's not bad, it's just the nose, like you get dusty something, and mind you, everything's in German, so I'm like, I don't know.
Can't really read anything. Yeah.
I can't really read anything. So I was like, okay, and there's not a lot on it. So, that's been the newest thing is a lot of different distilleries have been sending me bottles to review, to post, and it's been crazy because I'm like, I never expected the page to blow up the way that it did, and going to Whiskey Riot, all these people being like, oh my God, I don't mean to bug you, but I'm like a huge fan. I love your stories. I love your posts. You're so funny. And I'm like, cool, thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. So have a good life. Go Lockhouse.
Yeah. Are you a shy or introverted person normally, or are you normally this extroverted?
I feel like I'm very extroverted.
Okay.
Like I like being out. I like doing things. I like meeting people. So some days though, when I'm like, I feel drained, like my battery is on like low. I'm just like, oh my gosh. But like I've been at bars and stuff where people have walked up and I'm like, oh my God, you're the Buffalo Bourbon babe. I'm like, yeah, hi, I'm Rachel.
It's awkward though, isn't it?
It is. Like some days, like I'll go out with my friends and I've had people walk up to us. Like we went out for Valentine's Day and we were at Mother's and this guy's like, oh, you run that bourbon page. I'm like, well, it's Instagram, but yeah, it's cool. And he was like, I'm a huge fan. What's your favorite? What's the worst you've tried? And people ask you questions. I'm like, I feel awkward because people are like staring at you like, who the heck is this girl? Like,
right.
Who is this girl? Is she a thing? Like, so, I mean, I know you guys get it too. Like you go in public and you wear something branded and people are like,
right.
I know you. Like, I know you from the internet. And you're just kind of like, yeah, that's me.
It's kind of awkward though. Like I feel always like, why do you know me?
And you're just like, cool.
Yeah.
Then people are like, can I get a picture? And I'm like, yeah.
Can we try some of this?
Yeah.
I'm interested to see Screw Top B-. Just kidding.
Correct. Correct. Definitely not an A+ check mark.
So when I opened it, it was actually like fully sealed. And I was like, oh, I'm trying to pull that off, and I'm like, what the heck is happening?
Well, yeah. Am I wrong?
Like, what is this? Germany's doing some sort of black magic on here.
So you said that it's in German, and you're not lying, obviously.
No,
so
it's fully in German.
Yeah, it says straight Kalle Grundböhmen, Lydia Neischreichen on the back. So I'm assuming this is going to be really good. We'll see what this tastes like.
Oh boy.
Do you want some here?
Sure.
No,
Mike's like, you get none.
Yeah, he's like, never mind for you.
I know it's yours, but like, go away. I don't know who you think you are, Miss Blanton's over there.
This smells like a ripe orange to
Little
me on the
pony boy.
nose.
A little pony boy bourbon, by the way, guys. Blanton's is pony boy.
Oh, I totally see what you mean about roasted orange on the nose, Derek.
I said ripe orange, but that's fine.
Nailed it. You put it right in my head, but because you talked and not Rachel, it just left the other side of my head. So
You're like roasted
I just neglected
orange.
everything you said.
But I get like a dusty, a dusty sweetness on the back end of this. Like there's something dusty and like malty.
Yeah.
Like I get a lot of malty on this.
It smells like old potatoes or gunpowder.
It's something.
Something's not.
And it's not like dusty in the sense of like an old bourbon. Like once I went to Hartman's and Justin let me try like a 1950 James Beam before it was Jim Beam, and I was like, excuse me? Like, for me? And this bourbon was the best thing I've ever tried in my life, and it was the biggest bummer when it was gone. I just kept smelling my glass, and I'm like, so I'm never gonna have that again. It doesn't exist anymore, but it was the coolest thing ever. I think that was my favorite. And everyone's like, oh, it's the best bourbon you've had. And I'm like, I don't even know what that was. He just brought it out in this weird gold and white bottle, and I'm like, what is this? I honestly thought it was tequila at first, and I was like, yeah, I could take that away.
Yeah, really.
Justin's such a nice guy with his collection.
No, I was like, Justin.
This smells like this would go great in an old fashioned.
That's what
already.
I mean. You could do a cocktail with it.
It's like
But
sweetness,
sweetness,
orange dust,
Yeah,
like-
orange peel.
like
yeah.
you get a
There's a
lot of-
fruit element to it.
It's got a subtle sweetness, but it's not overpowering.
Yeah.
Like it's a very subtle, and wait till you try it. Like it's very subtle. Ooh, the finish changed from yesterday, even to me.
It's flat, but it's like oddly, it dries your mouth out too.
It's a dry finish, but it's not. It's a very subtle. Like it's not loud. It's not hot. It's just like it's mellowed all the way through.
There's some oil to it too, but it's not
It's-
viscous.
No. And again, I've never had a German whiskey before, so I was so intrigued with this, and I'm like, what is this?
Their beer is incredible.
Yeah, that's why I was like, huh.
That's what kind of that tastes like. Okay, so
It's almost got a beer
imagine this with me.
characteristic
Yeah.
to it.
Okay, so imagine this with
Yes.
me. You got like a Hefeweizen, but
Yep.
with a Blue Moon taste to it. That's what this tastes like. That Blue Moon orange citrus note and
does
that
taste like
dryness
Blue Moon.
of the wheat of the Hefeweizen. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly, but that's what I'm getting from this.
You're far too quiet when you say the name.
Correct.
Correct. Yeah, scream their language.
You got to just read the back of this. I was trying to read it yesterday, and like he wrote me this whole note in German, and I'm like, wow, thank you.
Right.
Who
Can I
has
type this into Google Translate?
translator? Yeah, it was like, put away. Like, you're so nice. But he sent me, they make a rum too.
Oh, okay.
So I was like, all right, like I'm ready to dig into this, but I'm like, this is one of the cooler things I've ever gotten. Like I got the Bradshaw.
Yeah.
Misunderstood is sending me something. They actually just shipped it out today. Doing a few different things.
What's interesting with this, and we've had to do this quite a bit on our show when we review like cocktail in a bottle or something like that, like the ready to drink cocktail sections, is you have to approach something like this with the expectation that it's not going to taste like whiskey, like
No,
bourbon. You have to
absolutely not.
approach this as like this is their iteration of a
What, an
spirit
American
distilled with
bourbon.
corn.
Yeah.
So take it for what you will. Like this is a great product if you're expecting it to be something interesting and something from Germany. If you're expecting this to be Buffalo Trace because
It's
that's
not
all you
gonna
drink,
be.
you're
Yep.
going to be disappointed. But this is pretty good.
But I feel like that's a lot of the people's issue with things like this. Is I posted this in a bourbon group, and they're like, "There's not a lot of reviews, and the reviews aren't great."
Yeah.
People go into whiskeys with the expectation of it being up here,
Mm-hmm.
and you can't do that. You have to have an open mind with it, especially it being German.
Right.
They don't make beer like we do. They're not going to make whiskey. Nothing that they make is going to be along the lines of an American. It's an American style.
Right.
So obviously, this one was what, like a 55 corn and a 45
with
malted barley.
yeah.
Yeah, and you get a lot of that barley on there. You get a lot of like malty, but you get orange. This is like, honestly, it'd make a good old fashioned. That's what I was saying. I'm like, I'm going to post it in a cocktail. I think it'd make a really good one. And also, I've been seeing people post old fashions with like chocolate bitters and like cherry simple syrup. And I'm like,
Interesting.
where have I been?
Right,
Because
yeah.
I've always done it the other way. And I'm like, you guys are up to some witchcraft. I like
Yeah,
it.
take notes when you open this as a cocktail bar.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, seriously, like it literally could be almost like a chocolate old fashioned. So they have bitters and everything. They have celery bitters I've seen, and I'm like,
Oh goodness. Celery is like 99% water.
so basically it's just water. I have some iceberg bitters if you guys are interested.
Iceberg. They make cucumber bitters though, don't they?
I would hope not. I mean, I do love.
They
a good
probably do.
cucumber.
Right?
They have to like.
Or a pear's bitter.
Oh, no.
Black walnut they do.
So
Those
I
are
have
good.
actually really cool cocktail with the Lockhouse barrel aged gin, a barrel aged Fitzgerald. It's lemon, simple syrup, our barrel gin, some egg white, or I use the fee foam because I don't feel like cracking eggs open, and walnut bitters. Amazing. When I
Fee
say
foam?
so it's called Fee Foam. It's really cool. Fee Brothers came out with this stuff. It's Fee Foam, but you put 4 things of it, like 4 shakes of it, in a cocktail shaker, and it foams up like egg white.
Oh,
You don't
okay.
have to use egg whites because, like, I love New York sours. That's like my cocktail choice. If I go anywhere and I don't know what I want, I'm like, it's gonna be a New York sour. Fee Foam has saved me a headache of like eggs constantly. I'm like, not that I mind it, but I'm like, it's a pain in the butt when you have
Right.
to like crack an egg open and now like whatever. So yeah, Fee Foam has been like my best friend lately. But even like using it in normal cocktails, like anything you shake, it just gives that little foaminess. It's totally
I didn't even know about that.
Where'd you
That's
get
pretty
it?
sweet.
Premier Gourmet or Wegman. Well, Wegmans in Rochester has it, but Fee Brothers is out of Rochester. So, but it's
Yeah,
really
it
cool
makes sense.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's $4. And eggs, I mean, I don't know the price of eggs anymore.
What does it come in? Is
It's
it like a
tiny.
quart?
It's like a tiny, tiny little guy. So you just need like 4 shakes of it. It's just like a bitter. It
Huh.
looks like a bitter. You don't have to refrigerate
And
it.
it lasts probably forever.
Oh yeah, like I've had mine since December, but I mean, not that I'm a raging,
Drink it every day.
not raging, making like New York sours daily,
Right.
but I mean, you only need 3 or 4 shakes of it, and it foams up like an egg white.
That's
So,
awesome.
That's pretty cool.
Again, that's why I'm like, I like sharing secret things I find.
Absolutely.
I'm not gatekeeping things. Like I'm not gatekeeping my German whiskey.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah,
with
thank you
us.
for letting us try it. That was different and exciting.
Yeah, I was like, you're never going to be able to be like, I'm going to go to Premier and buy this nice German. Like, you're not going to get that anywhere here. So I was like, you know what, I'm gonna bring it. Like,
Especially a German American style whiskey. Like that, the name there, American style, I don't think I've ever seen before.
and they use like German oak to make them.
Yeah.
So, and they said they use well water. So, but you know, it's different. It's something unique. It's different. It's fun. I was like, if I can bring something with me, we could drink Lockhouse at Lockhouse, but like, it's kind of cliche.
Yeah, how cliche.
So let's drink some American style German whiskey at Lockhouse.
We did not at all. None of us had anything Lockhouse this entire time.
Oh, yeah.
So,
No.
love it. Is there
Even though
anything?
your products are very good. They really are. I mean,
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not even a question. It's realistically, if you wanted a gin, 4 cocktails to have in your house for an event, it makes sense to buy Lockhouse because
Right.
it's so versatile.
And it's not going to be that heavy juniper, heavy piney. It
Yeah.
appeals to more than just like the gin drinker. And I think especially like our new Sakura gin, like if you like French 75s, phenomenal. And also it plays very well into a aviation with the cream de violet. The floral plays off each other very well. So,
Nice.
so we'll be releasing that at the end of the month. Super excited.
so what else can people look forward to from Lockhouse? When are you guys
So,
opening?
Hopefully, I'm going to say honestly by May. It's
Okay.
not going to be later because Cobblestone Live is going to be in July this year. It was just announced, so we will be open indefinitely for that. So we're going to have the bar open at least a few months prior to get all the kinks out. So I'm going to say by May, honestly. We have 2 months. Wow.
Yeah.
I'm like, wow, it's already March. We're in March. So yeah, I would say by summer, indefinitely spring, it's going to be reopened. So
Love that.
Good deal.
Well, Rachel, thank you so much for your time today. This was awesome.
it.
Go follow her, Buffalo Bourbon Babe, on Instagram. What is Lockhouse's social media?
at Lockhouse Dist.
Okay. And what are the hours that Lockhouse is normally open in May?
I believe that they're open pretty much 4 to 10, or
Okay.
you know, like obviously if there's a Sabres game, if people are here, they're not going to be like, all right, I'm ready to get out. But I think it'd be like a Wednesday through Saturday thing. We're open to things though, and you know what? If people want to do events or anything, I've already talked to a few like rescues because I love rescue animals. We're always open to doing fundraisers with people. I like personally doing that stuff, so if anybody needs someone to come to a fundraiser, I'm here for you, especially if you have animals. It's plus, I'll come pet your animals. Yeah, I probably will adopt them too.
Hell yeah.
So if you need to get rid of your animals, let me know.
Love that.
Got you.
Well, thank you so much for your time. Everybody go check her out. Go check out Lockhouse. If you're in for any type of cocktail or any environment where everybody can have a drink, Lockhouse is your place. So thank you very much, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys.
Of course.